Hello, it's me, Jess. Welcome to my channel. I'm here with another channeled message. This is a specific message. It might resonate with you, it might not. All right, so this message that's wanting to come through is a doozy. This is a big message. There's quite a bit of information that wants to come out in this message. I might have to break this up into multiple videos. I'm not entirely sure yet because I'm channeling this as I go, so we'll just have to see. But this definitely is in reference to the breaking of a major karmic cycle, and we have been picking up on that energy on the channel recently, and I do feel like this major karmic cycle that I'm picking up on in this reading is the same karmic cycle that I have been picking up on. And like I said, that karmic cycle has officially been broken, which means that the patterns and the way that energy kind of moves through this, kind of keeping that cycle going, has now broken. And the energy is, we're now in the phase of this karmic energy dispersing. And karma is often represented by Saturn. It can be a blockage, it can be very frustrating, and that blockage is actually starting to move and to dissipate. But the way in which this karmic energy is dissipating is in a very spiritual and very natural way. So when you think about something dying in the natural world and that being recycled back into the earth, that happens through a very natural process. You have other organisms that, eat and digest that organism, and then they excrete that organism back into the environment in a different form, right? It's a very natural process. And as this energy is dispersing, a similar natural process is occurring, but the eating and the digesting has to do with all the souls that are involved here in whatever this karmic cycle is, because this karmic cycle, this group, because there's more than one person involved in this, will not be brought together in future incarnations. Definitely not in the way that they have been, I think, for many incarnations, but because this is very deeply entrenched, this group will not reincarnate together here in the same way. That just will not happen. So this is kind of like a crescendo, a finale. This is like come one, come all, get it while you can, in terms of this is a whole experience now. The whole experience is there to be looked at and understood. So learn what you can. And that's what Spirit is wanting to assist with now in these messages that are coming out. Spirit is wanting to assist in the processing of this karmic cycle now that it's been a whole experience and it has finally been broken. So it's kind of learn whatever you can, integrate that knowledge into your soul, so that you can take that with you as you move on to the next leg of your journey. That's really what is on offer here. And similarly to how in spiritual circles, there's this phrase that we often hear kind of knocked around, which is that the path is a circle. And, what I think is meant by that is that the spiritual path is definitely a circle. And a lot of our lives, even though it seems like it unfolds in a linear fashion, and in some ways it does, but overall you can notice these kind of trends that life tends to unfold in cycles upon cycles upon cycles. And if we can look at our lives through a certain lens, we tend to revisit similar themes. At least that's true for my life, and I've heard other people talk about that being the truth for their life as well. We tend to revisit similar themes, different relationship patterns. Well, the same kind of relationship pattern and dynamic you can kind of play out. And that makes sense when you think about your own personal karmas, that you have a certain image of yourself, you have a certain identity that you resonate with when it comes to yourself. You associate yourself with certain traits and not with other traits, right? That's called an ego identity in spirituality. And so when you have that certain image of yourself, you're naturally going to be drawn into relationship dynamics that seem to complement that, or where that seems to be recognized or appreciated, where somebody has that kind of maybe a complementary energy that you are looking for, and groups that also do that in work environments. And if not, you might experience some level of friction. And that friction can be good because it can be challenging that ego identity. Like maybe you're ready to let go of some traits that you've associated yourself with and develop new traits. It can be hard, it can be challenging, but sometimes that occurs through friction, and that's what the friction is kind of trying to teach you, right? So that kind of makes sense that we would revisit the same paths over and over again. Well, similarly, as we're learning our karmic lessons, the path can be a circle. After the karmic cycle has been broken, that processing, that digestion of that energy is also a circle. We kind of revisit similar themes. Why? Because we can really only process a certain amount of information at a time, and that is well, and that is good. The same thing, you can only eat so fast, right? Or you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to get a stomach ache, right? You've got to chew, otherwise you can choke, right? You got to chew your food well and then digest it in your stomach and all that. There's a process for a reason, right? So we can only digest a certain amount of information at a time. There's also a certain kind of prerequisite nature to this as well, where there are certain things that we have to digest first, because we have to learn that, we have to understand that, we have to get that in our basket before we can piece together. That's one piece of another puzzle that's a different layer to the processing that we can do, that's available for us to do. It's not like you have to do it. We all process things in our own time. We learn lessons in our own way, in our own time. This is just what's available because you've broken the back of this major karmic cycle, right? It's available for you now, right? So again, there can be a prerequisite nature where it's like, well, you have to kind of understand this before you can build up to having another kind of profound breakthrough moment or understanding. In order to do that, we sort of have to revisit things over and over again, right? So that you can kind of clock certain things. That's what is Spirit is wanting to help understand about this kind of processing of the end of the karmic cycle. So these messages that have been coming out around the same karmic cycle, they're going to keep coming. They've been coming. I'm hearing this is one message in a series of messages that is intended to assist certain souls in their processing of this information, right? And they're showing me like a clog, which again, that's very karmic because it can be a blockage or an obstacle, right? They're showing me a clog in like a small tube, and they're running like pressurized air through it in order to remove the clog. And they're showing me that they run it through and then it stops. They kind of pulse that energy through, that pressurized air, because that might be a better method for removing the blockage or an obstacle than just to shoot the pressurized air through all at once. So they're pulsing these messages is what they're showing. And I think they're trying to tell me that this is why they have me reading the way that I am now, where we kind of do the smaller bite-sized readings and then we do the bigger readings. And, we have kind of shorter messages that come out where it's, for some people, they need to understand this or that certain thing if their processing will be fruitful in processing the overall situation. I'm hearing some people want to skip to the end, but they don't know what they don't know. And this is another karmic lesson. So there's lessons upon lessons here, because you can learn lessons about yourself and about the way your mind works and about the way you process your information. You can learn so much about your own process. And if you learn about your process alongside learning about a specific situation, well, you can take that learning and you can apply it to other situations in your life, which will just expedite and increase how quickly you're able to process through other karmic lessons. If you have that, that's a kind of self-knowledge, right? So they're saying, don't ignore the self-knowledge here as well. But that's kind of the purpose of this kind of pulsing and revisiting, because they're giving you something, they're allowing you to digest it, and then they're having you revisit. So maybe you can catch on to something else, or that you can finally build into kind of another crescendo moment where there's another layer of perception that you didn't even know you could kind of hit. That's what's going on here in the processing of this major karmic cycle. And they keep emphasizing that to me, major karmic cycle. So they're saying the difference here between a major karmic cycle and just like a kind of a more mundane kind of karmic cycle is the pile up, is what they're saying, right? Because the reason I keep saying this is like some kind of major karmic cycle is because it's karmic cycles within karmic cycles within karmic cycles within karmic cycles. That's what was actually broken here. So it's like a larger scale karmic cycle, if that makes sense, right? So what I mean by that is we have a certain situation that has unfolded, and the entire situation was kind of karmic in a sense, because there's a lot of blockages and obstacles that are available to be worked through and understood here. There's a lot of spiritual fruits that are available in this situation. I do feel like there's some kind of place or multiple places, but there's like a place here that's involved, and I'm hearing the words spiritual testing ground. Whatever went on here in this spiritual testing ground, and this is going to be the last thing that I'm going to say, and we're going to wrap this video up. There is so much more that I'm picking up on in this channel, and so we're just going to have to move this to different videos. I'm just going to take this kind of one segment at a time. But just to finish this up, right? What went on here in this spiritual testing ground, Spirit wants me to make sure that I emphasize that this was allowed to happen. It was not made to happen by the divine. And what I mean is, even if I was like tapping into this energy in another reading where maybe I wasn't going like as deep into this energy and into the nitty gritty of things as I am in this reading, even I might say something like, wow, this is like an extremely divinely guided experience. And what I would mean by that is that because of the nature of the karmas that are involved here, there really is a lot of opportunity to learn something on a spiritual level and really integrate that into the self. There's huge potential and opportunity here for every person that was drawn into this experience. And that's what I would mean. It's like the divine's energy really is infused. There's so much spiritual potential that is possible here, like in this experience. But I would not mean that the divine made this come about. This is more like a natural formation in the landscape. So what I mean by that is when you kind of look at like, I'm seeing like a bottleneck in a river. So it's just a fact that that bottleneck, it's not as wide as the rest of the river. So if a big storm were to come through, knock down a bunch of branches and twigs and maybe half the beaver dam from upstream, and it all kind of floats down there, it can collect and it can dam up that bottleneck. You can create a blockage, right? That's a karmic word. You can create an obstacle, and it can all kind of gather there until it finally gets like worked through or pushed through, right? Or maybe a beaver decides to move into that. I don't really know, right? But that's that karmic blockage. That's what I mean. There's kind of a natural formation, and spirit just did not impede this. Spirit kind of allowed this to come together because of the nature of the individual karmas that were at play. Does that make sense? So that's the buildup here. Now, this was always going to end in a tower moment. And I'm going to save that for another video because that was going to be the clearing of the blockage here, right? And you can rest assured that in previous lives, and that's why I'm saying there's severe karma here, and we've picked up on this in other readings that I've done, this tower moment would definitely have been the end of this divine feminine's life. It would have been sudden, jarring, shocking, out of the blue. And it would have been entirely based on a misunderstanding. And because we've got a group here, and it is probably... I don't want to get too much into this, but there's a formation here, this karmic formation. There's a divine feminine here, and she does kind of stand apart from this group. But and there is a group kind of around her, and I'm seeing that in like a crescent moon. And we've got karmic masculines and karmic feminines, and again, I don't want to go too deep into it. But that karmic nature, they're all kind of in a defensive posture. She is as well, but I want to save that for another video. But it would have come about under those circumstances. And so spirit is more... not guiding this, it's more, this is spiritually refereed because there's definite red flags and there's definite yellow flags that if certain people cross over that, you're going to have a tower moment come through that probably is just going to disperse the energy. It's going to fling these two people maybe away from each other or something, and it's going to be a tower moment. And that is preventing the worst from happening in this lifetime because this bubbles up into a crisis point. I mean, this is very flammable, like whatever is kind of like going on here. So that's, and we'll talk more about that in another video. But the last thing, I think one of the karmic lessons here, and there's more, and we'll mention them as they come up, like in the sequence, like the subsequent videos that are going to come out. But the one I'm picking up here that I kind of want to cap this off with is judgment. I think especially like this, this group here of like karmic masculines and feminines that have something to learn really here from this divine feminine. Unbeknownst to her and unbeknownst to them, she really is taking on the role of a teacher, not because she wants to, but because that's where she sits in her energy. So it has to do with judgment. Now, the purpose of this is not judgment. And I do think it's not judgment for the sake of condemnation. And I do think that's a major hurdle for the karmic masculines and the karmic feminines, this group here that's around this feminine. It is not judgment for the sake of judgment and for the sake of condemnation. Some of these people may have grown up in the church or other, religious institutions that really do focus on like hellfire and damnation and judgment and hell and, all that stuff. Honestly, girl, same. But it's not the purpose of they need to get to know healthy judgment. They need to not avoid judgment. The purpose isn't to then condemn judgment, right? There's healthy judgment. And healthy judgment is a part of an unfolding process. It's a part of an attunement process because you have to be able to hear that your note is flat. That is a judgment. You have to make that judgment call. You have to wrestle with that and be at peace with that. You have to call that spade a spade. My note is flat. Before you can then attune your note where it should be. Does that make sense? That's healthy judgment. And that's what's on offer here. But I do think there's some triggers, and I do think that's a major obstacle. That is one of the karmic lessons that this group here is learning from this divine feminine, or is that's what's on offer here. That's what's like potentially available. So I'm going to wrap that up there. That's the first part of, I think, this series that I'm going to end up doing here on this major karmic cycle. We're just going to take it segment by segment. We're going to build. And again, maybe some parts of this will resonate with you. Some parts won't. Maybe that's why Spirit's having it come through in these like chunks. But this is the first one. So I'm going to wrap that up there. Thank you for listening. If that resonated, please do like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Bye, guys.